My sister is the newly elected egg woman of our town. She doesn't have to work, just lies in the basement all day, mouth open, while people feed meat into her mouth. My sister started to get fatter and fatter, stronger and stronger. She lay in bed, unable to even lift her hand. 6 months later, all the men in town crawled into her bed. Later, my sister began to produce crystal clear cell balls every other day. I knew then that my sister had become a tea woman. Egg woman. This life, except for eating, will only lay eggs, never die. In the basement, my sister lay on the bed, chewing on a greasy grilled steak. She eats so deliciously. The grease residue from her mouth dripped down her chin. I was so hungry that my mouth was watering. Emily, I envy you so much. You don't have to work every day, just eat and sleep. Our town is relatively closed in the deep mountains, isolated from the world. The food in the town is under a collective distribution system. In our town, everyone, regardless of age or gender, has to work in the fields. No work, no food. But even if you work, the food you get is just enough brown rice to keep you warm. But my sister, she eats meat and fish every meal. I'm so envious and jealous that I'm going crazy. At this point, I stared at Emily, swallowed hard, and mouthed, Emily, what does steak taste like? Is it good? I've never had steak in my life. I'm so hungry for it. But Emily ignored me. She had just moved into the basement, and like a hungry wolf, she was devouring her food. Plop. A cow's eyeball fell to the floor. I crouched down and quickly reached for the food and stuffed it into my pocket. Give it back to me. My mom came down at some point. She glared at me, her fingers like pincers, clamping down hard on my palm. Are you a dog? How dare you try to steal food from your sister? Do you want to die? Mom, I picked this up. My palm was forced open, and I watched helplessly as the delicious cows I was taken away. Even if it's what your sister spat out, you don't have the good fortune to eat it. My mom gave me a fierce look, but to my sister, she was all gentleness. Emily, let me see if you've gained any weight today. She took a soft ruler and carefully measured Emily's height, head, and face with chest circumference, especially her waist circumference. As she measured, she muttered, my Emily has a high starting point, and she will definitely produce more eggs in the future. Eggs. I couldn't help but ask Mom, what does it mean to lay eggs? My mom gave me a blank look. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. You don't have to work outside anymore, just take good care of your sister. An hour later, Emily had swallowed an entire cow's head. She lay on the bed, rubbing her belly, burping comfortably. Mom, my stomach is so full. I want to go out and see the sun, walk around and digest. That's not possible. You're the hope of our entire town. Now you can't just walk around and show your face. My mom smiled and comforted Emily and took a soft ruler to measure Emily's waistline. Again, well, not bad. Not bad. Your waistline is 10 centimeters thicker. Keep it up. She immediately stood up and slapped me hard again. Don't you hurry up and clean up the food residue on your sister's face and hands. I bit my lip tightly. I just felt it was very unfair. Emelina and I are both my mother's children. Why did Emily suddenly become a high and mighty princess? And I became a servant who cleaned my sister's hygiene. It's not fair. It's just not fair. After cleaning Emily, I went upstairs with the basin. But I heard my mother talking to the mayor. The mayor said, Emily is the newly elected one in our town. You must take good care of her. My mom nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Of course, my family only has this one good seedling. I will definitely hold her in the palm of my hand. It's a pity about the last good seedling. The mayor suddenly sighed. Alice, who was elected 6 months ago, wasn't taken care of and she died in vain. Alice, she is my best friend. She used to be like me, working hard every day, but never having enough to eat. But one day, the mayor suddenly approached her and asked her to go to the basement and constantly supplied her with a lot of food. But for some unknown reason, Alice suddenly ran out of the basement like crazy. She begged me for help as she desperately reached out and dug into her throat. She vomited out a lot of stinky meat food. I looked at the pile of food at the time. I just felt that it was a pity. Alice is really a hard worker. She doesn't know how to enjoy herself at all. She lies in the basement doing nothing, and someone is there to wait on her. Isn't that comfortable? It wasn't long before someone came to take Alice away. Alice's fingers were tightly clasped to the dirt, screaming madly. I won't eat anymore. I won't eat anymore. Please let me go. I really won't eat anymore. The way she looked, the basement was hell, and it was like the food was poisonous and would poison her. Later, it wasn't long before the news came out that Alice had died of the plague. Mayor, although Alice is dead, it's also a blessing and a curse. On the ground, my mom said she died, so we were able to start the meat feast carnival early, and my Emily, it was after eating the meat feast that you were able to spot her with your discerning eye. I suddenly thought, we usually don't get to eat meat in our town. But every 2 years there's a meat feast carnival. Everyone can eat meat to their heart's content. It's just 6 months ago, shortly after Alice died of the plague, the mayor suddenly announced with a dark face that the meat feast carnival would begin early in the Grand Plaza. The mayor used a spoon to distribute a piece of meat according to size. I don't know if it's my illusion, but I always feel that the meat at the carnival half a year ago was not as plentiful or as tender as before. Thinking about it carefully, I suddenly felt a little scared. Could it be that the meat I ate at the carnival half a year ago was Alice? That girl Alice is also stubborn. She was in the basement, refused to eat a bite, literally starved herself to death. Through the crack in the stairs, I saw the mayor's face full of regret. What a pity Alice's figure is really unique in the town. It's a pity that she died. Our town has not had a single cub born in half a year. I felt even more terrified. Although our town is closed, the population has always been large. It's just, there really hasn't been a single newborn baby born in our town since Alice's death. Be sure to raise your Emily well. Through the crack in the stairs, I saw the mayor patting my mother's shoulder. His face solemn. Our town can't afford any more turbulent losses. Don't worry. My mom patted her chest and promised repeatedly. Her family, Emily, shoulders the future prosperity of our town. I will definitely take good care of her. I thought carefully. Why haven't there been any newborns in town since Alice died? Why is my current sister shouldering the prosperity of the town? True? Could it be? A horrifying answer that came to mind. I walked down the stairs, trembling. At this time, Emily was sound asleep. Next to her bed, there were all kinds of meals. Roast chicken legs, fatty intestines, pork liver, brain flour, Coke milk burgers, chocolate. Before I heard the conversation between the mayor and my mom, I would have looked at these delicious foods with longing, covetous eyes. But now, I'm terrified. These are all deadly foods. You really want to eat, don't you? I don't know when Emily suddenly opened her eyes. She deliberately gave me a big burp. Unfortunately, you don't have the good fortune to eat. Emily, There's no such thing as a free lunch. You can't eat these things. I leaned into her ear and whispered, the mayor wants to raise you, likely so you'll keep giving birth to children. Are you crazy? Emily looked at me as if I was funny. There are so many people in the town. Don't tell me they can't have children, and I, big girl, have to have children. I grabbed her hand and said tremblingly, Kumali, haven't you noticed that? No one in our town has ever had a big belly. Emily suddenly stopped talking. Her face gradually began to turn pale. It seems, yes, the merry women in our town, their children, it's like magic. They just suddenly appear. And there's a pattern to this magic. Today, my mom gave birth to a child. Tomorrow, there will be one in Mary's house in town. The day after, tomorrow, there will be one in Lisa's house in town. But half a year ago, with the death of Alice, the pattern was broken. Emily, do you know about Queen Anne? I slowly spoke out the scary thought that had formed in my mind. After the Queen Ant is elected by the colony, it can only stay in the burrow, and for the rest of its life, it does nothing but eat and lay eggs. Until it can no longer lay eggs, the colony will cannibalize the Queen's body and elect a new Queen. At this point, I tightly grasped Emily's hand and looked at her with concern. I think your current situation is very similar to the Queen Ant. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Emily grabbed the quilt with both hands and shook her head constantly. People are different from ants. Queen ants can lay eggs continuously, but people can't. People are pregnant for 10 months, at most 3 at a time. It is absolutely impossible to keep giving birth. Keep giving birth. Emily, just in case. I sighed. You listen to me first. These foods, you all eat a little less. You're telling me to eat less. Emily's voice suddenly rose. She abruptly shook me off, reached out to protect the food, and yelled, Are you jealous of me? You're jealous that I get to eat meat and fish every day, and you want to be like me eating these delicious things. Emily, you have to believe me. I was about to say something, but then I heard the sound of my mom's footsteps thumping up the stairs. You actually dared to think about eating your sister's food. You really want to die. She lashed down and slapped me hard across the face. I was slapped to the ground, my ears ringing, blood oozing from the corners of my mouth. But my mom wasn't done yet. She grabbed my hair and dragged me up the stairs. Get the hell up here, or I'll kill you. After coming out of the basement, my mom's face was grim. She reached out and pinched my neck. You eavesdropped on what the mayor and I were saying, didn't you? At this moment, she had no mother-daughter affection for me. She was very strong. I was choked so much that I couldn't breathe, and I felt like my neck was going to be broken by her in the next instant. My mother saw that I didn't speak, and her strength increased a bit. Did you tell your sister what the mayor and I said? I didn't dare admit it, shaking my head with difficulty and pain. At this point, oxygen was being squeezed out of my chest, little by little. I felt like I was going to die any moment. Still lying. A hint of viciousness appeared on my mother's face, and she let go of me abruptly. The next moment, her rough fingers were like iron pincers, gripping my tongue fiercely. With a flash of cold light from a blade, flop. My tongue was cut off. An unprecedented pain came. Blood filled my mouth. I cried out in pain, but could only make a muffled whimper. Your sister is the egg woman. All egg woman. My mom cut the bloody tongue on the ground with a blade. She is noble. She has access to food that no one else in our town can eat. But at the same time, she has to bear the responsibility of conceiving and having children. The fresh bloody tongue was cut into neat little pieces. My mom stood up. She glanced at me, her face expressionless. Before your sister takes on her responsibilities, I want her to be happy all the time, so you have to learn to shut up. My words didn't seem to have any effect on Emily. She lay in bed, stuffing greasy, delicious food into her stomach frantically. My mom was overjoyed. Emily is doing great. In just a few days, she has gained 20 pounds, and her waistline is 15 centimeters thicker. She is really making me proud. Emily suddenly stopped eating and stared at my mom, asking, "Mom, how much do I weigh now?" My mom smiled. 120 pounds. Emily gradually stopped chewing. She waved her hand impatiently. "You guys go out. I'm full. I want to sleep." After 2 hours, my mom and I went into the basement with a new basin of food. But we found that Emily was gone. "Emily?" I subconsciously looked around the basement. There was only a bed, a lamp, and a large table filled with food. There was nothing else. She ran away. My mom reacted for a moment. She flipped the quilt on the bed, her face genuine and fearful. "This dead girl. I gave her good food and drink. How could she run away?" Now, my brain went blank for a moment. Every time my mom and I went out, we would lock the basement door. Emily was never able to get out from the entrance. Then how could she have disappeared out of thin air? "It must be because of your big mouth, you bitch." My mom kicked me hard, her face already twisted, and she yelled at me, "If I can't find your sister, then you come and be the egg woman." I was kicked to the ground, my whole body trembling. Egg woman. A fat, lying in bed, struggling to move the body, has been eating, has been eating, has been pregnant egg woman. I don't want to. At this time, I noticed that under the low bed, there was a dark hole. Emily ran out of this hole. The basement was all cement floor. This hole would be difficult to dig open for a while. At this moment, I suddenly understood. Emily had long known the price of being an egg woman, so she had dug the hole long ago. She just wanted to be an egg woman for a few days, eat all the delicious food frantically, and then escape through the hole. However, she underestimated the abyss behind delicious food. Food. She didn't know. From the moment she entered the basement and ate the meat, she couldn't go back, and it was out of her control. Emily's escape caused panic and anger among the entire town. "I told you to take good care of her, and you let her run away." The mayor was furious. He slapped my mom. "We haven't had a newborn in 6 months. Do you want to destroy our town?" My mom lowered her head and pointed at me, tremblingly. Emily ran away, and there's still me. My little girl has a big, but she can definitely do it too. The mayor glanced at me sinisterly. The next moment, he grabbed me hard, lifted my clothes, and his old fingers began to press on my stomach and inch by inch. "Don't touch me." My tongue was cut off. I couldn't speak completely. I could only point to a place and whimper. "I know where Emily is. She can't escape. I'll take you to find her." Our town is in the middle of a big mountain, intense forest, and there are poisonous snakes and beasts everywhere. Emily is timid. She is most afraid of snakes. Therefore, she would never be far from town. There was only one place she could go. I was cruel and led a group of people from the town to the secret base Emily and I had discovered when we were kids playing hide and seek. It was 1,000-year-old tree that would take 3 or 5 people to hug. The tree's branches were thick and strong, and its lush foliage blocked the sun overhead. About 5 or 6 meters up the tree, 3 branches intertwined, forming a hole large enough to accommodate a person. The hole was very hidden, high up, and obscured by dense foliage. No one would have noticed it, unless someone had pointed it out specifically. Stop hiding. My mom grabbed a stone from the ground and threw it hard into the hole. Get out of there right now. There was no response from inside the hole. The stone was thrown in and bounced back out. When it landed again, it was covered in blood. She's in there. The mayor gave the order, get her down here. A few townspeople immediately climbed up the tree and pulled Emily hard. Emily shouted, "No, let me go. I don't want to be an egg woman. I won't eat anymore. I promise. I won't be greedy anymore." I suddenly felt that the scene in front of me seemed familiar. 6 months ago, after Alice escaped from the basement, she hid in the latrine. However, she was still pulled out of the filth. She struggled, screamed, said she wouldn't be greedy anymore. But no matter how she pleaded, she was still taken to the basement. Alice could never escape again. She paid the price of death to escape the childbearing, but could not escape the meat feast carnival. Emily was taken to the basement. The hole under the bed was filled with cement, but the mayor was still not at ease. He called a few male townspeople to watch Emily day and night. After Emily went in, she yelled, "I will not let you succeed. I will never be a waste who can only eat and give birth. I will never eat a single bite of your food again." To show her resistance, she threw all the delicious food on the long table to the ground and crushed it. Seeing this, my mother slapped me several times in the face. Originally, Emily was very satisfied with eating and drinking. "That's all your fault for being a big mouth." I covered my slapped face and shed tears silently. For 3 days in a row, Emily didn't eat any food. She soon became thin and haggard from hunger. My mom was anxious when she saw this. She held a fragrant and tempting pastry and kept feeding it into Emily's mouth. "My good Emily, please, eat something. You've lost weight. You can't give birth like this." Emily's eyes looked at the cake. A hint of desire flashed in her eyes, but it quickly disappeared. She was very determined. "Don't waste your time on me. I would rather die than let you have your way." I started to worry. If Emily doesn't become an egg woman, then I will replace her. No, I will never let that happen. I spread the food all over Emily's bedside and knelt down, begging her to eat something. But she closed her eyes and didn't move. After a few more days, Emily was so hungry that her cheeks were sunken and her face was yellow. But the strange thing was that she hadn't died yet. A person will be in danger of dying if they don't eat or drink for 3 days. But now 7 days had passed. How could she still be alive? Obviously, she had been sneaking food from the table when I wasn't looking. I sighed lightly, wrote a note, and handed it to Emily. "Emily, why bother sneaking around to eat? Life is short. You might as well enjoy the blessing of eating and drinking for 2 years and then die peacefully." Emily was too weak to even have the strength to speak. She just glanced at the note and closed her eyes to rest. I held a fragrant steak to her nose and kept shaking it. "Eat. If you don't eat, you will die. If you eat, you can at least live a happy life for a few years." Because my tongue was cut off, I couldn't speak clearly. But I think Emily must have heard me. She bit her lip, trying hard to restrain herself. But the instinct of hunger made her unable to resist. Finally, she opened her mouth and took a hard bite of the steak. From that bite, she couldn't stop. That day, Emily returned to her initial madness. She wolfed down the food, eating and eating until her throat was so full that she couldn't fit any more, and then she spat some out. "You eat what I spit out." Emily pointed at the scraps on the ground and ordered me angrily. I knew she was taking revenge on me. It was I who led the townspeople to find her, so she hated me. I stood there, tears welling up in my eyes. "Emily, I have no choice." Emily glanced at me in disgust and shouted, "If you don't eat, then I won't eat either." She deliberately raised her voice so that my mom upstairs could hear her. So I would get beaten. "I'll eat, I'll eat." I lay on the ground like a dog. Emily seemed to have completely resigned herself to her fate. She ate frantically regardless of her image, and kept making things difficult for me. In the basement, I kept telling myself, she is the egg woman. She carries the hope of the town. I have to endure it. With this belief, I endured all kinds of torture from her. As time went by, Emily, who was once a thin girl, became fatter and fatter. Her belly was like a spring stretched round and long by the food. At first, I could still turn her over and wash her body by myself. But now, Emily was like a big, greasy, white worm, and I couldn't turn her over at all. The mayor was particularly concerned. "This is our town's only seedling. We must not let her get scabies. We must keep her skin dry and healthy." So he sent a few little girls to take care of Emily. The sound of Emily's chewing constantly came from the dark basement. I held my breath, lifted the folds of her chin, and tried to clean the dirt hidden there. But Emily was not cooperative. She deliberately lowered her head and muttered, "He ruined me. I will not let you have a good time." My eyes reddened and I gestured to my tongue. "Emily, I also paid the price. My tongue was cut off." "What does that have to do with me?" Emily raised her finger with difficulty and poked me hard in the leg. "If you were blind, deaf, and your leg was broken, I would let you go." Her fingers were greasy and it hurt when she poked me. But I couldn't refuse her. After finally taking care of Emily, I gasped for breath and quickly climbed up to the ground. Tears of grievance gradually filled my cheeks. She is my own sister. Why is she doing this to me? Just because she was chosen to be the egg woman and I wasn't. At first, when she escaped from the basement, I really thought about helping her. But I really didn't expect that the mayor would use me as her replacement. I can't sacrifice myself to fulfill Emily. I'm not that great. Emily asked herself, "If you were me, wouldn't you do the same to me?" There was no one to tell my grievances to. I ran, as usual, ran to a deserted place and cried freely. After a long time, I leaned against a big tree, panting heavily. But the moment I stopped, the image of Emily's obese, wrinkled and ugly appearance reappeared in my mind. A vicious thought gradually rose in my heart. Maybe if Emily died, I would be relieved sooner. "Hello, hello." Suddenly, a clear male voice came from behind me. I turned around in a hurry, only to see a tall and thin boy with a backpack and a handsome appearance. But he wasn't from our town. His skin was very white, his fingers slender. The boys in our town worked outside every day and definitely wouldn't have such fair skin. I looked at him warily, gesturing with my hands and asking, "Who are you?" "I'm a tourist from out of town." The boy smiled. He took a few steps towards me. Have you been crying? Why are there tears? As he spoke, he took out a pack of tissues from his pocket and handed them to me. Wipe your tears, you're so beautiful. It's not good to cry. I smelled a nice smell on him. Fresh and cool. It seemed to have touched the softest part of my heart. I cried, even louder, intermittently, whimpering with my tongueless mouth. My sister, May, she bullied me. Why would she bully you? The boy heard my words clearly. He reached out as if to pat me on the back to comfort me, but stopped abruptly. If you have anything to worry about, let me see if I can help you solve it. He suddenly shrugged helplessly. Oh, Phil, at the moment, I also have the problem of not being able to get out of this mountain. He was in a desperate situation, but there was no sign of despair in his eyes. I was immediately attracted to him, and I even forgot to cry, just staring at him, blankly, and asking, "What's your name?" Jack. He held out his hand to me. What about you? What's your name? Me. I lowered my head and murmured, "My name is Lucy." That's a pretty novel name. Jack smiled at me and asked, "Where are you from?" Are you here for tourism, like me? I've been walking in these mountains for hours and haven't seen a single person. My voice was lower and weaker. I'm from these mountains. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. There are people living in these mountains. I nodded. There are many people living here. Jack asked, "Can you take me to see it?" I took him to my house. Along the way, the neighbors in the town stared at Jack intently. Jack looked embarrassed. Do you rarely have outsiders in your town? I replied truthfully. Yes, you are the first person to come to our town. The news that a strange man had come to town quickly spread throughout the town. The mayor specially approved an extra ration of rice and sweet potatoes for my mother. Jack took the bowl and chopsticks, but ate very little. This is what you eat every day. I could tell he was struggling to swallow. At that moment, I couldn't even understand it. The rice that the mayor specially approved was white rice, which my mother and I rarely got to eat. Why, when faced with delicious refined rice, was he not at all tempted? Unless he ate these foods often. After dinner, Jack excused himself to go to the toilet and pulled me out. Under the bright moon, cicada chirping and gentle breeze, we walked side by side. The moonlight stretched our shadows long, intertwining with the shadows of the surrounding trees. I couldn't help but ask, "Is our food not good?" Jack was silent for a while before he said, "Well, it's okay." I knew he was lying. But I couldn't help but ask him, "Is there a lot of delicious food in the outside world?" Of course. A smile appeared on Jack's face. We have barbecue cake, spicy, hot pot. So many delicious things. You can't finish them in 3 days and 3 nights. I said, then are sweet potatoes and refined rice considered good food where you are? Jack shook his head, not really rice. And sweet potatoes are the most basic foods where we are. So, the best food we had here was just the most ordinary and basic food to him. I suddenly felt a sense of inferiority. I'm going back tomorrow morning. Jack suddenly stopped in the moonlight. His smile was gentle. I will come back again. Next time I come, I will bring you a backpack full of delicious food. I blurted out. Take me with you, okay? I don't want to stay here anymore. I hate this unchanging life. I hate being humiliated by Emily and beaten by my mother every day. Jack was obviously stunned. You aren't you? Afraid that I'll sell you. Don't you know? Don't trust strangers easily. I'm not afraid. I gathered my courage and looked up at him. I believe my eyes. My eyes tell me that you are a gentle and kind person. So please take me with you. The night was very long. Jack and I, under the moonlight, from walking side by side at first, to him gently holding my hand in hand. He knew everything about me. He thought I was having a hard time. Ting. He told me seriously that he would take me away. The night was getting darker and darker. I had to go and serve Emily. I led Jack back to my house. The door of the house was tightly closed, but the lights were on inside. I was about to knock when I heard the mayor's voice coming from inside. He said the new boy is good looking. If we let him sleep with Emily, then the babies born in our town will definitely look better than those born from previous egg women. My mother was very happy. That's what I think too. No good. My whole body tensed up. Ew. I hurriedly pushed Jack. He can't stay at my house anymore. You go leave our town now. Jack didn't understand the conversation between the mayor and my mother. He didn't understand what's wrong. I lowered my voice, took his hand, and ran towards the town entrance. The mayor wants to hurt you, run. Jack was stunned. Aren't you coming with me? I shook my head. I have to go and take care of Emily. If I don't go on time, my mother will quickly find out that something is wrong. Himmler, but I promise you, I would take you to see the outside world. You run first, you will definitely have a chance to take me with you later. I didn't care about anything else. I said anxiously, if you don't go now, it will be too late. Finally, Jack took his long legs and ran towards the depths of the forest. Creak. At this time, the door of my house was opened. My mother poked her head out. She glanced around me, her face cold. Where is that young man? He shook my head. I don't know. After I took him to the toilet, I separated from him. Hasn't he come back yet? I ran away. My mother suddenly screamed quickly, get someone to find that good seed. Kamira quickly walked out and rang the alarm horn in the town. Countless townspeople came from all directions. My heart skipped a beat. Jack had just run away. He was not familiar with the terrain. He would definitely be caught by the townspeople. Mom, I think I saw Jack just now. I hurriedly pointed in the opposite direction of Jack's escape. He ran that way. Slap. My mom slapped me hard in the face again. You bitch, you actually dared to lie to me just now. But the mayor had his doubts. He asked the townspeople to spread out and search everywhere. Get your ass down to the basement and take care of Emily. My mother thought I was playing with her, grabbed my hair and dragged me madly to the basement. In the basement, Emily was like a fat worm. She saw my face, swollen from being slapped, my hair disheveled. Her heart was overjoyed. Haha, why were you beating my mom? Tell me quickly and make me happy. I ignored her, my heart full of worry for Jack. Emily began to howl. I'm hungry. Feed me quickly. In a few seconds, my mother walked into the basement. She didn't say anything, just clenched her fist and smashed it hard into my face, still thinking about that man. Remember, Emily is your heaven. Emily became interested. Mom, who is the man she is thinking about? The outsider. in town. My mother quickly stroked Emily's greasy hair and smiled. My Emily is blessed. When the mayor catches him, you will be the first to enjoy him. Jack was caught. He was dead when they caught him. He ran into the forbidden area of our town. The forbidden area was a deep abyss that was too dark that night, and he was being chased by a large group of townspeople. In a panic, he jumped into the abyss. The water in the abyss is a taboo. It has been passed down in our town for a long, long time that the water there is poisonous, and if you touch it, you will die. The townspeople said that Jack could swim. He struggled in the water for a long time, but no one dared to touch the water to save him. After about 20 minutes, he died. The water in the abyss was strange. Instead of sinking, people floated on top of it. So, the townspeople used iron hooks tied with ropes to hook Jack back. No, Jack's clothes were stripped off. He was pointed at and talked about by the townspeople without any dignity. He's so white. Look at his arms, so thin. This man, I knew at first glance he looks good, but useless. Enough. He didn't do anything to you. Why are you talking about him like that? I went completely crazy and shouted at everyone. I killed him. Killed him. You're really biting the hand that feeds you. My neighbor Mary glanced at me. This man has only been here for a few hours, and you're already speaking up for him. That's right. You wouldn't happen to like him and be promiscuous, would you? If you're so promiscuous, then you should volunteer to be the egg woman, and then a bunch of men will dote on you. The townspeople started to mock me. My mother, who cared about her face, the most grabbed a nearby, and walked towards me with a gloomy face. I didn't notice her and took off my coat and carefully covered Jack's body, although I had only known him for a short time. But I found that I really liked him. I don't know if this is called love at first sight. My mother is not good to me. She cut off my tongue and always slaps me. My sister is not good to me either. She always humiliates me. Only Jackie made me feel warm in this cold and cannibalistic town. He told me that people in the outside world are all like him, hospitable and helpful. He also said that he is a college student and he will apply to the relevant departments to let me go to school. But now, just because of my stupid mistake, I brought him to my house. So, he's dead. He died because of me. While I was overwhelmed with grief, my mother raised the hoe and smashed it hard on my leg. I dodged in a hurry. Her hoe landed on Jack beside me. Thump. Jack's chest was smashed to pieces. His bright red blood splattered on my skin. At that moment, an unprecedented pain-burning sensation came from my skin. Still trying to run. I'll kill you. My mother chased after me again. The surrounding townspeople also stopped me. Then, my leg was broken by the... My mother didn't kill me, because Emily made it clear that the only condition for her to become an egg woman was to torture me. I can no longer walk and only kneel on the ground to serve Emily. I knelt holding a glass of water in my hand, staring at her blankly. Emily, I am your own sister. Why are you doing this to me? Emily wolfed down the food, muttering, I'm not happy. You don't get to be happy either. She said that a long time ago. I already understood, but I still insisted on asking. In order to completely let myself be heartbroken. Now, Emily's goal has really been achieved. I have no tongue, no legs. no different from a cripple. Emily drank some water. I straightened my back with all my might and slowly poured the water into Emily's mouth. She took a few sips and said unhappily, "Why does the water taste strange today?" "It's the same as before." I looked at her calmly. "Maybe it's because today is your big day." Then, the basement door suddenly opened. All the young and strong men in the town walked down naked. The color completely drained from Emily's face. She opened her mouth full of food, horrified and desperate, yet seemingly relieved. "Finally, it's here. She's really fat now." Every word she said, food spilled out of her mouth. But the men in the town were very excited. They like fat and strong women like souls the most. I crawled out of the basement. As I left, I saw tears in Emily's eyes. She shouted at me, "Compared to my suffering, the little torture I gave you is nothing." Ugh. Emily's screams of pain came from the basement. Then her voice became quieter and weaker. I crawled out of the basement and gently lifted my sleeve. The skin where Jack's blood had splattered on my arm, which had been the size of a pinprick at first, had gradually spread all over my skin. I knew very well there was nothing wrong with Jack himself. The problem was that he choked on the water from the abyss, and the water mixed with the blood in his body, and when it splattered on me, it righted me. Obviously, the taboo left by our ancestors is real. I used to be terrified of the abyss, but today I dragged my crippled feet and crawled towards it, little by little scooping up some water. This water. I poured some into Emily's mouth. I poured some into the cans. Well, I'm useless now. Oh, God, anymore. The townspeople who killed Jack, they don't deserve to live either. After that night, Emily began to have children. No, to be more precise, Emily began to lay eggs. My mother breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, the day has come. I'm so looking forward to the egg woman giving us lots of children. That's for sure. The mayor said triumphantly, "The water in our town has a special function after drinking it. You can be like aunts producing an egg ball every other day, and the child inside the egg ball can grow into a baby in a day." Soon there was a scream from the basement. Emily had produced an egg ball. My mother ran down happily. "His first child is mine." She ran out holding a fleshy ball. The fleshy ball was dark gray, and inside, they curled a baby. "What's going on?" The mayor's face suddenly became solemn. "Why is this baby gray?" My mother also frowned. The egg balls produced by the egg woman in the past were all transparent white. Why is the one Emily produced today so wrong? The mayor roared, "All those who took care of the egg woman, get out here." 4 boys and 4 girls stood up at once, including me. The mayor's eyes stared at me. "Did you feed her something wrong?" Everyone shook their heads. Only Dick kept laughing. I couldn't help it. The thought of Emily's egg balls all being gray babies. I just couldn't help but laugh. The mayor noticed me. He grabbed a kitchen knife nearby and was about to rush towards me. At this time, my mother shouted, "No good, mayor. Look, the baby in this egg ball. He's not moving. He's dead." "What?" The mayor trembled. "The egg woman you raised for half a year, the child she gave birth to, is a stillborn." The surrounding townspeople were shocked. They were in chaos, a scene of utter devastation. Our town hasn't had a baby in over 6 months, and it's obviously too late to raise another egg woman. People in our town have short lifespans, except for a few. Everyone's lifespan is generally only 2 years old. Now, Emily is useless. It takes half a year to cultivate a new egg woman. But after half a year, the strong man in our town will be old and incapable. This means our town is about to be wiped out. The mayor knew it was I who had ruined the entire town. The meat from the previous neat feast carnivals was from egg women who could no longer lay eggs. But the mayor, in order to vent his anger, ordered people to dismember and eat me on the spot. They looked at me with greed, wanting to eat me. But when they lifted my clothes, they saw that my entire body was actually dark gray. Everyone backed away from me in horror. She touched the water from the abyss. She's poisonous. You can't eat her. Ha ha ha. I laughed wildly and fearlessly. You all drank the water from the abyss. You all have to die with me. Soon, my numb toes also turned dark gray. There was not a single piece of good skin left on my body. At this moment, my whole body began to stiffen. My vision began to darken. A few seconds later, my stiff body began to turn into dark gray powder. The breeze blew gently, scattering my body around the forest. I looked up at the vast sky. I feel so sorry. I walked with Jack under the moonlight. We blew the night wind together. Listened to the sads of shaking together. But I haven't seen the blue sky with him yet. We haven't seen the white clouds moving slowly in the sky. He hasn't either. Taken me to see the outside world. I'm sorry. Jack, if I could do it all over again, I definitely wouldn't have met you. No, if I could really do it all over again, I definitely wouldn't have them out to cry. That way, I wouldn't have met you. But there are no ifs. He and I, after all, we stayed together in this cold and terrifying town. Epilogue. A few days later, a group of uniformed police officers walked towards the town with a woman crying her eyes out. The woman was holding a photo in her hand, and in the photo was Jack's bright smile. At this time, the woman's voice was already hoarse from crying. I heard someone say that they saw my son walking in this direction. My son must be here. After some searching, they finally dug up a male body from a raised grave. The male body was Jack. The woman fainted. The police dispatched a large number of manpower and resources to investigate. Eventually, it was found that Jack had died from drowning. The police then proceeded to investigate the town, but they found that there was not a single living person in this huge town. However, their furniture was still neatly arranged. The pot was still cooking white rice. The townspeople had disappeared overnight. They will never know. In this secluded forest, there lived a group of people called Old Egg People. Their lifespans are very short. They lived a very primitive life with a unique water source. Their way of reproducing is to choose an egg woman, fatten her up, and let her keep producing egg balls. And now, this Ant-Egg People village, because of the arrival of a strange man from the outside world, gave a little girl courage. At this point, the village was completely annihilated.